A woman in harmony with her spirit is like a river flowing. She goes where she will without pretense and arrives at her destination prepared to be herself. Dr. Maya Angelou.
I took on my mother's religion and tried to make it my own. Standing in clothes too big and shoes too small, making the best of the reflection in the mirror. I wore faith and uncertainty as the heaviest robe, second only to those I wore on Children and Youth Sunday. The God I spoke to rarely spoke back, yet I laid across the chapel floors. I danced, I sang. I served a God who wasn't listening. Because why did he take my father, my grandmother? Not protect me from sliding hands. Not show my mother how to love me. I prepared myself every Sunday morning and Wednesday evening to listen to the stories about people who did their best with no handbooks. To this day, I hate the story of Job. There's no redemption there, just moving on and being told to be happy with what's left. It never sat right with me. Which, looking back, introduced me to the idea of a God that can't and won't be questioned. That we're simply pieces thrown back into the chess box after yet another lesson, another proclamation of faith tested. My hands shook and I couldn't understand why. The safest places were deep in the spines of green-blue hymnals and 90s Kurt Franklin tracks, where collective war cries cut through condemnation. I walked towards the pulpit and gave my life to Christ at 5. My godmother lost sight of me until she saw me at the altar. My mother was working and missed that moment. I remember breaking the surface after baptism and thinking I have to be perfect. I have to be good from here on out or God will not love me. That all of this would have been for nothing. I wrote my first sermon some years later as a youth leader, still holding on to my doubts. Nothing hit quite clear. Just a string of emotions, spiritual highs and lows, until the next fill another Sunday. As the quote goes, it's been fun finding God in the places the church told me not to look. There's something to be said about going home to one that no longer exists and making a new place to land. I learned old-time religion here. I grew here. I broke here. And as the ground holds the leftover bones, it's still hollowed, even after she gave up the ghost. Deconstruction is a 4-letter word in most of Christianity. To deconstruct means that something has to be torn down in order for it to make sense. And so much of evangelical religion counts on blind allegiance and following that which makes no sense.
It's something to be said about being here for the first time in years. And I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to feel. But it's heavy.
I've gotten into the Believe It or Not channel with Trevor Pullman, an ex-youth pastor who does the work of deconstructing his belief in Christianity, leading to him renouncing it completely. The episode that rang truest to me was this one, which features a small segment on Joshua Harris, the author who wrote about what we now call purity culture, and the book from which the movement really took its footing.
I'm not a Christian. What do you mean by that?
I was really just trying to be honest about the fact that all the ways that I had defined faith and Christianity, that I was no longer choosing to live according to those.
Harris has since renounced both his book and Christianity. In the very next segment, a preacher I will not name is mocking Harris, saying he was never truly Christian if he could give it up that easily.
Now let's look at a totally rational response to that.
I don't know if you heard the breaking news story, but Josh Harris has decided to kiss nothing goodbye. Why? Because, well, he was never a believer in the first place, but he has decided to recant his Christian faith, which means the universe is done. Josh Harris is the first man to be bigger, stronger, and more powerful than the God who says, "He who began a good work in you is faithful and just to forgive you and cleanse you from all unrighteousness." Not going to happen anymore. Josh was the one who was able to get out of his salvation. Don't you see? The intercessory work of Jesus Christ failed because of Josh Harris denouncing his faith.
As he spoke more, Trevor chimed in, and I'm paraphrasing, that many of us who begin to question don't want what we're feeling to be true. We don't want a gotcha or an aha moment, because that would mean all we've known isn't real.
They didn't set out to leave their faith. They didn't want it to not be true. But when they came face to face with reality, they decided to be honest with themselves.
We pray for the doubt to leave, the nagging for more information to stop. And when we're really desperate, and go to the elders, the deacons, the pastor, the bishop, the reverend, we're told our faith is weak. We must be doing something wrong. We don't believe hard enough, and our faith walk is not strong enough. So we go back to square one. We pray harder to the version of God we were taught wouldn't hear us, and hope for a miracle, just like in the book. If we're lucky, we're picked up from these ashes by beings that look like us, who share our blood, our traumas, our break from this perspective and these chains. A God that looks like me. A system that requires I water myself in the holy water we just whipped up with herbs and passed down wisdom. My grandmother was a root worker in her own right. She passed it down to me. I would stir up tinctures and call them potions, and played with magic that came honest. When light left her eyes, I put her on my altar, followed by my great-grandmother, who I never got to meet on this side of heaven. She came to me as a black bird, covering my head. My mother followed. Since leaving Christianity in 2018, my path is more clear. The fear and loathing replaced by the remembrances of my own heartbeat and solitude, reshaping my life unhooked from the foregone conclusion and a will I never signed off on. Looking back, I recognize that the book, the systems, the legalities, the expectations we clung to caused more harm than peace. The God we tried so hard to serve resembled an abusive partner we were constantly told we didn't deserve. And the congregation continues to wonder why we choose so badly look at our examples. A new reality surfaces. No more serving, being voluntold what to do. We step down from ministries that wouldn't have us any other way if it wasn't for the need for bodies. We take back our Sunday mornings. We learn that self-love isn't evil, that hell isn't real, and the Left Behind series is evangelical propaganda. The martyrs. We decide to live. The foundation crumbles. The freedom is scary and perfect. There's a peace in no longer circling the drain of pleading with a higher power to see you. In learning that God, Source, Creator, lives and thrives in us first, producing from us what we have as birthright, not something we have to earn. And allowing ourselves to think outside the binaries, to find God everywhere we were told not to look. As more of my millennial generation and Gen Z truly begin to embrace the non-religious margins, especially those of us born into Christianity, I hope we don't give up. I hope we keep searching. Because we deserve to know how far we can go.